That was New St. Mary's Cathedral you were just looking at. It's the bishopric, if you will, the county seat of the Diocese of San Francisco. I'm not exactly sure how they refer to it. As you can see, it's got a very modern design. It was built in the 1970s to replace what is now referred to as Old St. Mary's, which is over on the edge of Chinatown, which is one of the oldest churches in San Francisco. Since I've looked back and at some of the strange encounters I've had with people where they tried to intimidate me and they were part of the brainwashing I've been subject to, there have been a few instances where I've had encounters now that explain to me why they were doing it. And as I've said, there are many people involved who know what I'm going to do before I do it. It appears they have information from the future. I know it sounds crazy. But here's a fact. A woman named Kathleen Cachet entered my life claiming to be my birth mother. She's vehemently anti-Christian, anti-American. She's socialist. Everything that's been done to me comes together in this woman. And, I've since learned that she's not my mother. Now, she did some things to set me up. And I'm not going to go into that now, but we had a lot of strange conversations. And I've had a few with her where I realize now why she said some of the things she said. And at one point, she brought up, and she's a white male basher to the core. That's really important. Her two things that she's most against. She said some anti-American things, that's for sure. She says some socialist things, that's for sure. But her two big ones are she absolutely hates Christianity and straight up. And she brought up, somehow we got on the topic of Jews one day. And for whatever reason, and I didn't know what was going on at the time, and she was always kind of angry when she'd get to certain points. And, like a lot of people acting like they're angry at me. And she's if you haven't figured this out, she's an insane radical feminist. And she started, for whatever reason, we got on the topic of Jews. It was very important for her to make me believe that African Jews or African American Jews are common. Okay, which obviously, yes, there are some African Jews. My response to her was, well, Kathleen, I lived in New York. There were a lot of Jews there. I worked in television news, so many of my associates were Jews. And living there, it's easy to observe things. And once in a blue moon, you would see African Jews, like up at the jazz club on Broadway around 95th. I recall I used to see some in there. But other than that, I can't remember any specific instances. That's how few there are. And I didn't know what was going on at the time. It was very important for her to impress upon me that black Jews are so common. Now, upon arriving in San Francisco and realizing that I'd been the subject of anti-Christian brainwashing and then returning to church and visiting different churches here in town, sure enough, I figured out why Kathleen was so insistent on attempting to convince me that black Jews are so common, which they simply aren't. I guess they probably don't even make up 1% of the Jewish population. But anyway, inside the cathedral, which is a very modern design, there are these bronze sculptures that surround the floor area. I think there are two on every side. And they depict the most important events in Christianity. And when you walk in the door, immediately to the left is the crucifixion. And I'm going to show a picture of that to you right now. Part of what's going on with the gays who have gotten into the design business, and it's not only gays, who are getting into design in order to kind of perpetrate this, I hate to use the word conspiracy, but very much is to do what they do in kind of this, obviously a covert way that either people won't notice, or if they do, they'll think it's just not that big of a deal because they don't notice them all, is the whole thing. And I've experienced what I've experienced with brainwashing, and now I see these things. And, in case you couldn't tell from the picture just now, we'll look at it again. The lips on that depiction of Jesus in the crucifixion are exceptionally large, and the hair is quite clearly made to look like a woman's hair. So essentially, what you're looking at here is black transvestite Jesus. I did a little research online, and I found an article about those bronze sculptures from when the church was constructed in the 70s, and it turns out that the designer is actually from the Vatican, which surprised me. Regardless of that, the obvious things about them are what they are. I noticed on one of the other bronze sculptures, Mary was depicted with having exceptionally large lips, all of which is just, at the very least, 100% incorrect. Most Catholics would call it blasphemous, but I won't go there. I would mention that I think they changed it. I noticed when I first went to the cathedral that the crucifix that they carry in the procession to open and close the Mass was very overtly gay in design, and I can't explain that to you because I wasn't able to get a shot of it. The next time I went back was for their Chrism Mass when they blessed the oils for the year that they use, the holy oils, and at that one they had a different crucifix. So I suspect, like I said, the people who are doing what they're doing to me know what's going on in advance. So I suspect they changed that crucifix, which was just so overtly gay. And what concerns me is that, gays, they're close to fundamental political stances that are contrary to the churches. And here I am showing you sculptures that depict Jesus as a woman, and they have a gay crucifix, and they're also trying to depict him as black. So it is what it is. As I said, Kathleen is a white male basher, and she hates Christianity. That wasn't all I noticed about the cathedral. I'm going to show you a couple shots of the spire itself that leads up to the ceiling. It's the ceiling of the church is shaped like a cross, which you'll see here, and there are walls that kind of, or go to the roof, it's hard to really describe, that kind of twist up into that shape. And here's a couple shots of that.
I find it hard to believe that someone actually decided this was appropriate for the inside of a Catholic church. Kind of twists.
The first thing that strikes me about that superstructure that leads up to the cross at the top of the cathedral is the design pattern with that hexagonal motif in it. It has kind of an industrial mechanical feel to it, and I've learned that some of the design choices that are being made are meant to make people feel sad and lonely in a weird kind of way. And the important thing is that pattern, that whole design choice they made with that hexagonal motif pattern going up there reminds me of the movie Event Horizon, which I've learned is connected to my situation. And there's a filmmaker named Andrew Kevin Walker who also wrote a movie called The Game, which my situation is also related to. And incidentally, I also noticed a similar hexagonal pattern in the background of an evangelist television show called Spirit Contemporary. Here's a look at that. It's not so much the modernness of the design of the cathedral that bothers me. it's some of those individual choices that I've described here. If you noticed around the bronze sculptures, they were surrounded by some bare cement, and I don't think that was such an issue there. But, in that superstructure that goes up with the hexagonal pattern and the bases of it, which you might have seen in some of my clips, it's all made of bare concrete, and that again adds to the cold industrial feel of it all that I think is just inappropriate for a Catholic church, knowing what I know about my situation. I have a friend who went to Notre Dame, and we discussed this. And he mentioned to me that when they decided they were going to replace the cathedral, they had a certain design in mind. And then at the last minute in the process, there was a change to this design, this ultra-modern design. And, that was in the late 60s. He also mentioned to me when we talked about those bronze sculptures that often the artists will consult with local people involved about what they want. And, I guess there's nothing wrong with that, but to depict Jesus as a transvestite is absolutely blasphemous. I think to depict him with African lips is just positively incorrect, but to depict him as a transvestite is nothing less than blasphemous indeed. So, that's where it's at, and I think the whole thing is that it's San Francisco, and that's the culture here. But they also had that gay crucifix that was just so overt that I mentioned earlier, and which has been gone. It's since been gone. But I think fitting with some of the other information I've described in some videos, it's pretty clear what's going on.